Hey, what's up YouTube, Skybadger here, and we are back on God knows what day it is, 26 it appears. So first things first, this audio is recorded in post well after the fact. So before we get into what's happening today, I'd just like to apologize for my recent upload schedule. It's been maybe 3 weeks since I last uploaded. Anyway, just the normal excuses, school, work, study, all that stuff, just haven't had the time. So, we're here now though, finally got round to it. So what's happening in this game here? Well, this is a few days after our engagement in the last episode with the South African Navy. So as we can see here, we're moving back up north. We no longer have the support of Matt, but we are close to land. At this point in the combat, I believe I was going in to try to sink a few submarines that were floating around in the area. Now, it's also worth noting that at this point we are outmatched in the air, especially in the center of the ocean. If we hug closer to the land and closer to the shore, we'll have the support of Matt and his air force, which will give us more power and help us control the battle. However, as you can see here, for some odd reason, I've elected to go right into the center of the ocean. So that's probably not the best move on my end. However, I think what I was trying to do here was actually circle around. Day change was coming, and I wanted to give the enemy a false impression of where I was going. Make it look like I'm just holding in a certain pattern, just keeping moving for the sake of moving. As you can see there, Matt's air force is incredibly large and incredibly powerful. If I hugged closer to the coast, I'd have it to assist me. However, as we can see there, underneath Matt's aircraft, there is a enemy convoy that I can't remember what the convoy is made up of, but I may have been trying to avoid that. So that's what's happening right there. If we come up the coast, we can see that our subwall is also slowly extending and has quite a lot of cover. We can also see that East Amazonas also has a navy up there in the northern regions. So I guess probably what we're doing here is my navy is protecting the south while he'd be covering the north. At least that's the only thing that I can think of that would make much sense. So if we head down south, we can see my tactical bombers patrolling over the southern area. Now, the tactical bombers are only on patrol because I have no other use for them at the moment. I can't embark them on my carriers. I can't do much more with them. So they're just down there protecting our coast so we don't have to place troops along there and we get a little bit of extra warning. As you can see, Matt's navy is heading around to our eastern border, I believe. Well, technically it is the western border, but I mean, you know, they're heading to the east to protect that side of us, and they're going to meet my fleet there, and then we're going to head out into the Pacific Ocean and do some hunting. So if we come back here, as you can see at the moment, I'm trying to select those aircraft to get an idea where they're landing from. Now, when they updated the graphics, they took away the feature that basically lets you see where the carrier is and where the planes are operating from. So what I'm doing at the moment is I'm actually switching back to the old graphics. This way, when I select the enemy planes, I'll be able to see where they are landing and where the carrier they are operating from is based. And this will give me a good idea of where the majority of their forces are. Carriers don't stray too far away from the rest of the fleet. So as we can see, the enemy carrier is only just out of sight. If our ships were maybe 70 kilometers forwards, we'd be able to get a shot on them. However, we wouldn't want to do that anyway, as there's plenty of enemy ships in the region. So that gives us an idea of where their carriers are and where our targets are. We can also see that enemy convoy is slowly getting into range. So we're back a little bit later on, and not too much has changed. We've found the South African Navy, and so we're heading back towards our coast to avoid getting trapped between the two navies we've encountered so far. We've engaged the South Africans with our air force, what we have available on the carriers, and we've been able to deal some damage in taking out one of his naval bombers. Now, the reason that is such a big victory is it stops him from spotting our submarines and really inhibits his ability to perform naval combat. Now, as you can see here, he's trying to sneak in there to destroy my naval bomber. Now, what I'm doing to stop this is I'm very quickly getting that naval bomber back on the deck of a carrier. While it's in the air, it is not supported by any of the naval units below it. So those 5 enemy interceptor squadrons are basically going up against one naval bomber squadron, and they will rip it to shreds. So my naval bomber's landed, and it now has the support of the carriers. I'm also sending my interceptors in to directly strike the enemy aircraft. Now, I'm only going to strike them if they hit my naval bomber. If they do not hit and expand their attack, I will not go in for the hit myself, or else they will have the opportunity to defend. So that's what's happening there at the moment. I'm also setting up a patrol just so I can hopefully get range over the carrier before the enemy attacks, and as you can see, obviously he pulled off. However, that's what I was going for. The patrol will quickly extend the range and give me a chance to cover the naval bomber. So clearly that worked. He didn't want to risk losing a lot of interceptors in exchange for one naval bomber. So as you can see, I'm now just, in spite of him, sending my naval bomber up again just to get a little bit more intel. So this is why we keep naval bombers on board, because they're the only unit in the game that can spot subs. If I was unable to spot subs, I probably would have been sunk way earlier than this, and I definitely would not have made it this far. Now, a wise thing for me to do at this point would be to actually probably regroup all my aircraft. He's clearly going for my naval bombers, so regrouping them all together would give me a chance to then protect my naval bombers, stack them up into a large stack, and then whenever he attacks my naval bombers, he also has to attack my interceptors. So that's the plan right there. As you can see, my cruisers are also trying to catch up with my battleships and capital ships. I left those down behind, hoping to get some easy hits on the enemy. However, at this point, I pretty much opted for running. I'm trapped between two different fleets, and I definitely don't want to get stuck between there. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm moving my cruisers back and moving my battleships back and trying to regroup them so I hopefully don't die. So I clearly took my own advice. As you can see, I've stacked up my aircraft. So my naval bomber is now being escorted by 2 interceptors. However, that did not stop South Africa from attacking. However, I got lucky. He attacked, and just due to RNG, he did no damage. So it was a win-win. Later, going back on it, he took damage himself in this attack. However, none of my aircraft received any damage. So I basically just got a free hit on him there. I kind of wish I'd had a few more aircraft. That would have been a nice one to have had all my aircraft in on. However, he probably then wouldn't have attacked. So, you know, that's just what I'm kind of rubbing in fella's face at the moment. Fella is South Africa, and I'm just rubbing it in that he failed to attack me. So what I'm doing at the moment is I'm regrouping my ships even fast now. As you can see, I'm force marching them back together to get them in one stack. Now, the enemy aircraft in the region have become a lot more potent and a lot more numerous. So I need to get them back in one stack so that when I do have planes on the deck, they have that extra protection from my cruisers. So at the moment, I have my battleship stack, which has the battleships and the carriers, and then I have my cruiser stack, which has the cruisers and the destroyers, the faster units. So I need to group them all together to make sure they're nice and safe. As you can see, I'm also force marching way down to the bottom of the left of the screen, and that is to get out of there as fast as possible. That noose, I guess you could say, is tightening around my neck, and I need to get out of there. So this is the aftermath of our battle with the South Africans. As you can see, we lost all of our capital ships. Now, that last force march you saw me initiate in the last clip was able to save all of my fast units, so my cruisers and my destroyers. However, I was unable to get my battleships and carriers out of there in time. Now, jumping over to the Pacific. So, while I was fighting the South Africans, I put my ships into I didn't do anything with them. I left them stationary, and this has come back to haunt me in this moment. The Asian countries have pulled off a version of what the South Africans were trying to do, but even way more successful. So at this point, I've got my aircraft out scouting, and as we can see, using the old graphics, I've been able to determine that I am stuck between 2 fleets, and it was horrible waking up to this. So, that group up there was the group we were hunting originally, and it really went off course. So I parked up down here in the south to hope I could move up there and attack it later on. However, they found me while I was offline. The enemy ships in the region outnumber me quite a lot. So what I'm doing at the moment is I'm keeping my aircraft really close to my group. That way I can land them at a second's notice if the enemy tries to direct strike them. I'm outnumbered in the air, and there's nothing I can do. As we can see, I can't even head back towards the coast as South India has me cut off. It would be nice to be able to run back there to the support of Matt. However, I just don't see that happening. As you can see, South India also has some other ships in the region, particularly in the Atlantic. However, that's not too big of a deal. As we can see, I have also pulled down my enemy tactical bombers overnight, and they will be going back up probably once I stop recording this clip. It just makes sense to bring them down when I'm not using them and when I'm not even there to see what's passing underneath them. So this is what it looked like basically before most of the action happened. As we can see, I'm heading down south as fast as I can, pushing towards the weak link in our enemy, and that happens to be New Zealand. So I'm pushing down there because I know that is the weak link, that is the link that I can target and probably get through. So I'm going down there as fast as I can. I've split up my ships so I can get my destroyers down there as fast as I can get my subs down there as fast as I can, and get my everything there as fast as I can. As you can see, I've also left 4 submarines out behind. That is so my enemy cannot sneak enemy submarines up and behind me to then stop my battleships while they're weak. As you can see, once again, we can see pretty much all the different angles are covered. So as you'd expect, I've got my aircraft out scouting, and I've noticed that there is a group of 7 submarines in front of me, South Indian. So I'm moving my destroyers, my cruisers in to fire on them as soon as possible. So this is where things start to go downhill. I take a bit of a gamble here, and it doesn't really pay off. Unluckily for me, at this point, I'm only 4 hours out a destroyer upgrade, and that destroyer upgrade would have definitely flipped the tide of the battle. So what I'm doing here is my cruisers and my battleships are getting ready to face off against South India's largest ships. I'm going to position my destroyers so they can target his subs, and then he's going to want to come in and try sink my destroyers so I can't escape. So what I need to do is target his battleships with my cruisers and battleships. Luckily for me, I have upgraded cruisers, and that will go a long way. So we're about to fire our first shots at the enemy. As we can see, I'm coming down and I'm clicking the attack button at the moment. Because I've got my fire control set to hold fire, my ships won't automatically open fire. So the enemy battleships were on 98%, and I just downed them to 80. Now, I know that's not all that much damage, considering I was firing with 3 battleships, but we have to remember that his battleships were in the same location as his cruisers. So although they were in separate stacks, they technically occupy the same space, so damage is split over both groups. At the moment, I am moving my destroyers back to my main fleet, so that when he gets within range, he cannot open fire on my destroyers. Now, I usually recommend keeping all your units separated. That way, their damage timers, their reset clocks, can reset in their own pace. However, I don't want to leave my destroyers out in the open, as they are currently my only way to get through those 4 subs that are blocking my path. So getting them back to the group is vital. As we can see, my naval bombers have also picked up 4 enemy submarines behind us. So it's important I don't let those get too close, so the submarines I put out behind before as the rear guard are going to come in handy in stopping that. At this point in the battle, all my ships are back in one stack. Now this was to help us absorb the incoming blow from the South Indian battleships. Now as we can see, we took a lot of damage and we actually lost 1 destroyer. Not all that much, however, in the end, it was probably a massive loss. So keeping our destroyers active in the battle at this point was incredibly vital. At this point, although you can't see it, I am aware of some Papua New Guinean subs. Did I even say that right? Papua New Guinean? Anyway, some submarines that belong to Papua New Guinea. And I'm aware that they're in the area. So I've come up with a bit of a plan to get through the 4 submarines that are presently stopping me. Now, usually this sort of maneuver is very unadvisable and should not be attempted. But basically, what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to stack all of my ships back up into one stack. And while his submarines are marching towards me, I'm going to engage them in combat. That way, they will be forced to attack me. I can deal defensive damage, then I will attack them, and I can deal attack damage. Therefore, hopefully speeding up the rate of the battle by 2. Now, if I do this quick, I can get out of there and I can easily start running. From what our intel suggests, south of this point here is pretty much nothing. There's those New South Wales ships, but apart from that, there's nothing else down there. So it all comes down to whether or not I can make this work. And I guess we'll find out soon. So basically, at this point, I know for a fact that based on the calculations I've done, my ships possess the amount of damage needed to knock them out in one hit. However, as we all know from experience, there's a lot of unknown factors in this game. So although between the 20 ships I have in that stack at the moment, there is the firepower required to knock out 4 submarines, the chances of that actually happening are pretty low. So we'll jump ahead a bit and we'll see that come into play. As we can see, I'm marching my ships forwards now. And boom, as you can see, we've engaged the enemy submarines, but sadly, we've only been capable of destroying 2 of them. Now, our next attack is coming up in a second, so this could make or break what happens here. As we can see, we've also lost another destroyer, so the chances of that happening are incredibly low. Between 7 destroyers dealing damage at a rate of 6 per hit, we'd expect to do about 42 damage, which alone is enough to destroy the enemy submarines. Each only have 25 and they're both damaged. However, as we've said in the past, this is not really my lucky day. Could have done with a bit of luck here and it didn't exactly pay off. So within the next few minutes, we'll see them open fire and I'll probably jump ahead. So as we can see, we just opened fire on the enemy submarines, and as we can see, there is only 1 left. And sadly, what that means is this hour we've been unable to escape the enemy, which means my fleet is toast at this point. So we came incredibly close to escaping the situation. However, because we were unable to sink that last submarine, it gave the South Indian submarines that were behind us a chance to catch our fleet. Had I sunk that 1 last remaining submarine, I would have been in the clear and been able to run. However, because I was unable to make the most of that opportunity, really due to some bad RNG, we got absolutely fried. Back over in the Pacific, by the way, what remains of my first fleet, the cruisers and the destroyers, are gauging enemy vessels in a very small skirmish. This one here, I was able to get a little bit of redemption by sinking a few submarines, but really this combat didn't progress much past this point. Really, past this point, my ships head back up to the Caribbean Sea, where they'll regroup for hopefully one decisive battle. So before we finish off, I'm just going to show this image that was given to me by the opposition in this battle. So thanks to them for giving me this image. Now this just shows what I was up against at the very, well, not the very end. I've still got a little bit of footage left after this. At this point here, this was just after I was able to take out the last submarine that was initially blocking me. Now, once again, like I said earlier, it was an hour too late. We can see that there are 11 Papua New Guinean subs blocking my exit. As well as that, there is the main Papua New Guinean fleet off to my left and the South Indian fleet off to my right. As we can see, I was able to deal some damage to them before it even got to this point where I was stuck. At this point, we were able to sink 1 of the South Indian battleships, and we were able to do a lot of damage to the cruisers and destroyers that were harassing us. Now, from this point on in the combat, basically all I was trying to do was take out as many people and as many ships as I could on the opposition. So I gave up targeting the enemy submarines, knowing that there were 11 subs targeting me that I could never get around, and focused back on the enemy ships. So targeting destroyers, battleships, and cruisers, and trying to deal as much damage as possible. So that's really it for this episode. Sorry for the delay on this, and I'll see you in the next episode, I guess.